What happens when an alien empire attacks a human convoy and thinks humanity will only send a complaint? What happens when they learn that humans do not count lives as numbers, but as names? Before the story begins, take 1 second to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who enjoys deep space stories where humanity shows the galaxy what happens when mercy is mistaken for weakness. The cargo ship Mendicant moved through neutral space like an old whale crossing a quiet ocean. It was not beautiful. It was not fast. It was not built to fight. Its hull was wide, heavy, and patched in places where time had left its marks. Its cargo bays were full of medical supplies, culture archives, emergency food units, and repair equipment meant for small colonies near the HFY. For Captain Howell, that was enough. He had spent 40 years among the stars. He had crossed trade lanes during pirate seasons. He had docked beside worlds that still argued over their first orbital laws. He had carried medicine to famine moons and teachers to mining colonies where children had never seen a blue sky. He believed in trade because trade meant trust. Weapons could frighten people. Treaties could impress people. But cargo, real cargo, useful cargo, told the truth. It said one civilization had something another needed, and for a brief moment, both sides agreed that tomorrow was worth building. That was why the Mendicant had only light armor and old defense shields. It was a civilian vessel, registered under the Galactic Trade Guild. No serious power attacked ships like that. Not in neutral space. Not without warning. Captain Howell stood on the bridge with a cup of bitter coffee cooling beside his hand. The bridge lights were low. The crew moved with the calm rhythm of people who knew their jobs too well to rush. Outside the forward glass, distant stars burned in perfect silence. Then the scanner gave a sharp tone. Howell turned. Four contacts appeared at the edge of the display. They were moving fast. The first officer looked up from her station. Captain, 4 vessels just broke from shadow drift. Howell stepped closer. Identification. A moment passed. The first officer's expression changed. Theer combat ships. The bridge became quiet. Everyone knew the name. The Theer Combine was not the largest power in the galaxy, but it was among the most difficult. Their ships patrolled border regions with the arrogance of priests and soldiers mixed into one body. They believed their faith gave them the right to expand. They believed strength was proof of divine favor. Most species avoided them. Humans had avoided them too. Not out of fear, but because trade routes could be moved, delays could be absorbed, and arguments with fanatics rarely created profit. Howell stared at the display. We are not near their territory. No, Captain. We are deep in neutral space. Open a broad channel. The communication officer nodded. A soft crackle filled the bridge. Howell straightened his jacket, though nobody on the other end would see it. This is the civilian cargo vessel Mendicant, he said. We are carrying humanitarian medical supplies and cultural data to the HFY. We are a neutral vessel registered with the Galactic Trade Guild. We request safe passage and confirmation that your approach is non-hostile. There was no answer. The 4 alien ships kept coming. Their shapes grew on the display. Long, narrow, black vessels, built like blades designed by someone who hated curves. Their engines burned pale violet. Their weapons were active. Howell's hand moved slowly toward the alert panel. Try again, he said. The communication officer transmitted the message a second time. This time, the answer came. The voice was high, cold, and thin. It sounded less like speech and more like a knife dragged along glass. Human vessel, you are inside territory claimed by the Theer Combine. You will shut down engines and prepare for inspection. Howell frowned. He had negotiated with pirates before. He had spoken to customs officers who invented taxes while looking at cargo manifests. He had been threatened by people who wanted money, influence, or simple attention. This did not feel like any of those things. Theer Commander, Howell replied, keeping his tone controlled, our navigation records confirm we are in neutral space. I can transmit coordinates to your vessel. There may be a mistake. There is no mistake. The bridge light seemed colder. The fear voice continued. You will comply. Howell looked at his first officer. She looked back. Neither of them spoke, but both understood. This was not an inspection. This was theater. The fear were not confused. They had chosen this place. They had chosen this ship. They had chosen a civilian convoy. Howell opened a private channel to the two human escort corvettes flying beside the Mendicant. They were small ships, lightly armed, meant to discourage raiders, not fight a military patrol. Escort 1, Escort 2, stay alert. Something is wrong here. Send a burst message to the nearest human outpost. Include our coordinates, fear contact, and current threat level. A voice answered. Understood, Captain. The warning began to transmit. It never completed. The fear ships fired first. No warning. No final demand. No countdown. For beams of charged particles ripped through space with terrifying speed. The first human corvette tried to raise shields, but the beam hit before the field fully formed. The ship split across its center. White light burst from the wound as its reactor failed. The second corvette turned hard, but the second volley cut through its engines and then its core. It burned for less than 3 seconds before becoming debris. On the Mendicant, alarms screamed. Howell grabbed the side of his command chair as the deck lurched beneath him. Damage report. The answer never came. A beam struck the cargo bay. The ship shook like a living thing in pain. Atmosphere exploded into space. Crates, medical pods, frozen supplies, and broken metal spun into the void. Emergency doors slammed shut, but too many compartments had already opened to vacuum. Crew members shouted over each other. Main shield is gone. Cargo decks are venting. We have fires in Section 4. Bridge armor failing. Howell stared at the forward display. The fear ships were still firing. Not disabling. Not warning. Killing. The captain understood then. They were not trying to capture the Mendicant. They were making an example. His voice became calm. Launch emergency beacon. The communication officer was bleeding from her forehead. She dragged herself back to the console and slammed her hand on the manual release. A small beacon shot away from the dying ship. It was no bigger than a coffin. Its engine burned once, then went dark, becoming another piece of debris among thousands. The fear did not notice. Howell watched the beacon vanish on the display. He allowed himself one breath. Then the final beam hit the bridge. There was light. Then nothing. The fear commander watched the human convoy die without emotion. His name was Vlex, captain of the Sword of Faith, honored blade of the Combine, servant of the High Council. He stood at the center of his bridge, surrounded by officers wearing the painted markings of their military faith. On his screen, the Mendicant broke apart. Pieces of hull drifted away. Small emergency lights blinked across fragments of wreckage. No escape pods launched. Good, Vlex thought. The lesson had been clean. Humanity had grown too comfortable. Their merchants moved across trade lanes as if wealth were protection. Their ships carried goods through regions where older powers still held divine claims. Their diplomats smiled. Their captains spoke in polite tones. Their colonies spread outward one station at a time. The High Council had decided that humans needed correction. Not a battle. Not yet. Just a message. A convoy destroyed in neutral space would force them to understand their place. Humans would protest. They would demand compensation. They would send diplomats with long speeches and soft threats. The Combine would deny everything. Or perhaps it would accept responsibility and call the attack a border enforcement action. Either way, the humans would learn caution. Vlex turned away from the display. Leave the wreckage, he said. Let passing ships see what happens when lesser species ignore sacred claims. His navigator bowed. Course back to patrol route? Yes. The sword of faith turned. The other Theer ships followed. Behind them, the wreckage of 3 human ships drifted in silence. But silence, in space, is often a lie. The emergency beacon from the mendicant had survived. It did not scream. It did not flash. It did not beg. It transmitted. A tight burst of encrypted human data leapt into the relay network. It carried coordinates, ship identification, sensor recordings, hostile signatures, and the final seconds of the mendicant's bridge audio. It passed from one relay to another. Then another. Then another. Across the dark, through systems, past colonies, through military listening posts and trade guild archives, the message traveled with cold perfection. The dead ship spoke. And Earth listened. On humanity's home world, night covered half the planet when the first alert reached military command. Within 6 minutes, the recording had been authenticated. Within 11 minutes, the names of the destroyed vessels were confirmed. Within 18 minutes, casualty estimates reached the Human Defense Council. Within 24 minutes, the Theer ship signatures were matched against known patrol groups. Within 31 minutes, the face of Commander Vlex appeared on secure military screens across Earth, Luna, Mars, and every major human fleet base. There was no public panic. No shouting in the streets. No confused political storm. Humanity had changed since its early days among the stars. The old nations remained in culture, language, food, songs, and memory, but war command was unified. Humanity had learned, through bitter centuries, that scattered reactions invited disaster. So the response began underground. Deep beneath a mountain range on Earth, in a chamber protected by stone, armor, and silence, the Human Defense Council gathered. The room was plain. No golden symbols. No ceremonial banners. No grand music. Only a long black table and a massive hologram showing the remains of the mendicant. Admiral Kinski stood at the center. He was old enough to remember the Mars fires. Old enough to have seen cities sealed under glass after orbital strikes. Old enough to know what happened when leaders confused patience with weakness. His face was still, but everyone in the chamber felt the anger in him. It was not hot anger. Hot anger made mistakes. This was colder. More useful. More dangerous. A defense analyst spoke first. The attack was carried out by 4 Theer combat vessels under Commander Vlex. The convoy was in neutral space. The mendicant identified itself as civilian. The escorts did not fire. Kinski did not look away from the hologram. Survivors? None confirmed. The word landed heavily. A political representative near the end of the table folded his hands. Could this have been unauthorized? The room waited. Kinski slowly turned. The Theer commander transmitted his identity. He did not hide his ship. He did not jam the beacon. He wanted us to know. The representative swallowed. Then it was a message. Yes, Kinski said. And messages require answers. Another officer stepped forward. Our models suggest the Theer expect diplomatic protest first. Possibly sanctions through the trade guild. They likely believe our response time will be slow. Kinski's mouth tightened. They studied our markets, he said. Not our history. The hologram changed. Now it showed Theer space, their patrol corridors, forward bases, shipyards, fuel depots, relay stations, and supply routes. Red points burned across the map. The intelligence director spoke. For 7 years, we have tracked Theer military movement because of their border aggression. We know more than they think. How ready are we? Kinski asked. 7th Fleet can jump within 2 hours. 3rd Fleet within 4. Long-range missile carriers are already loaded. Cyber teams are prepared to enter their relay systems once war authority is granted. The political representative looked pale. War Authority. Kinski faced the council. They murdered human civilians. They destroyed escorts that had not fired. They attacked a humanitarian convoy outside their territory. We can spend days choosing softer words, but the dead will not become less dead. No one answered. Kinski continued. The fear believe power is shown by killing the undefended. We will teach them a different definition. The council debated for 3 hours. Not whether to respond. That had been settled the moment the beacon arrived. They debated scale. Some argued for a limited strike. Some wanted a blockade. Some wanted the fear commander captured alive and tried before a neutral court. Then the full recording from the Mendicant Bridge played inside the chamber. Howell's calm voice. The fear demand. The warning to the escorts. The sudden alarms. The order to launch the beacon. Then static. When it ended, nobody argued for restraint again. The declaration of war was not delivered by a crying leader in front of flags. It was sent as text first. Then voice. Then video. Every human frequency carried it. Every colony received it. Every Allied station heard it. The message was simple. Effective immediately, the human species recognizes the fear combined as a hostile military power. All diplomatic channels are closed. All fear military ships, bases, and logistical assets are valid targets. This state of war will continue until the Combine no longer possesses the ability to threaten human life. It was signed by the Human Defense Council. The galaxy read it. The fear laughed at first. Then, 30 minutes later, humanity sent a second message. It was not emotional. It was not angry. It was a list. A list of fear bases. A list of fleet positions. A list of supply depots. A list of command relays. A list of shipyards. Each entry included coordinates, estimated personnel, defense strength, shield frequency range, and strategic value. Inside the fear capital, laughter died. High Commander Erlach stood inside the temple chamber of the Combine and stared at the human transmission. The council priests sat in a half-circle around him, their faces painted with black and silver marks of divine office. For years, they had spoken of human softness. Human trade. Human compromise. Human love of comfort. Now a human war declaration glowed before them with the precision of a blade. Erlach read the list again. His throat felt dry. They have been watching us, he whispered. One priest leaned forward. Impossible. These coordinates include restricted military stations. Yes, Erlach said. And the shield notes are current. The chamber grew quiet. Another council member spoke with forced confidence. Information is not victory. Humans are merchants. They may know where our bases are, but striking them is another matter. Erlach wanted to agree. He could not. There was something in the human message that unsettled him. It did not sound like a threat made for effect. It sounded like a machine beginning its work. He looked at the attack report from Commander Vlex. A civilian convoy. Medical cargo. No survivors. For the first time, Erlach wondered whether the High Council had misunderstood the species they had chosen to frighten. They had expected humans to value peace because humans traded. But perhaps humans traded because they already understood war too well. On the edge of human-controlled space, Commander Anna Rotova stood aboard the Valiant Heart, flagship of the 7th Fleet. The ship was not graceful. It looked like a fortress that had learned to fly. Its armor was layered. Its weapon ports were ugly and practical. Its engines had redundant cores. Its shield emitters were buried behind plates thick enough to survive direct hits. Other species built warships like symbols. Humans built them like promises. Rotova stood with her hands behind her back, watching target data scroll across the main screen. The first target was Terra. A Theer forward operating base built into an asteroid, used to support patrol groups near trade routes. 2,000 military personnel. Docking bays. Fuel reserves. Command relay. Shield grid. Point defense network. She knew the numbers. She also knew Captain Howell. Years ago, they had served together on a heavy carrier. Howell had been patient, funny, and impossible to beat at cards. He had once told her that a captain's first job was not to command a ship, but to bring people home. Now he was dead in neutral space. Rotova looked at her first officer. Fleet status. Commander Soren answered. All ships ready. Jump drives charged. Strike craft loaded. Missile racks armed. Cyber packets prepared. Any change from command? No. Objective remains full elimination of Terra base military capacity. Rotova nodded once. No speech. No ceremony. Only the order. Jump. Space tore open. The 7th Fleet vanished. At Terra, the Theer base crew was still arguing over whether the human declaration was real. Some officers believed it was political theater. Some expected sanctions. Some thought humans might send one fleet and demand surrender. Nobody expected the enemy to appear above them less than 4 hours after the convoy attack. The 7th Fleet arrived in a wave of white distortions. The Theer sensors screamed. Too late. Human ships entered the system in attack formation, already firing drones, jamming packets, and targeting beams. The Valiant Heart led the charge. The asteroid base activated shields. Rotova watched the shield bloom across the target. Main gun, she said. Loaded. Fire. The Valiant Heart spinal rail cannon launched a tungsten rod at a fraction of light speed. No explosion followed at first. Only impact. The rod hit the shield and turned stored energy into violence. The shield did not crack. It vanished. The second human volley punched through the exposed base and opened its central hull from one side to the other. Theer defense turrets turned, searching for targets. Human strike craft arrived before they could lock. Small fighters swept in close, firing missiles into turret housings, sensor masts, and shield nodes. Human pilots did not fly in clean parade lines. They moved like hunters in a storm, changing angles, using debris, masking each other, turning every defense calculation into failure. Theer ships inside the dock tried to launch. Human cruisers fired into the docking bays. Doors collapsed. Launch rails broke. Fuel lines burst. Ships died before leaving their cradles. The Terra commander finally sent a transmission. This is a military base of the Theer Combine. You are violating sacred territory. Rotova heard the translation. She did not respond. The base had helped patrol the region where the mendicant died. It was part of the machine that had made the attack possible. Human doctrine was clear. Do not strike the hand while leaving the weapon loaded. Destroy the weapon. Within 9 minutes, Terra base was burning. Within 13, its command core was gone. Within 17, every defense system had failed. Within 21, the 7th Fleet moved on. No human ships were lost. No cheers rose on the bridge. Only quiet work. Rotova looked at the ruined asteroid. Send confirmation to Earth, she said. Terra eliminated. Moving to secondary targets. Soren nodded. And if the Theer are listening? Rotova's eyes stayed on the wreckage. Let them listen. Far away, Commander Vlex received the news aboard the Sword of Faith. Terra was gone. Not damaged. Gone. He watched the battle recording twice. Then a third time. Each viewing made less sense. The humans had not fought properly. They had not tested defenses from range. They had not waited for a formal challenge. They had not demanded a duel of commanders or offered a chance for honorable withdrawal. They had appeared, closed distance, broken the shield, destroyed the base, and left. It was brutal. It was wasteful. It was personal. That last thought disturbed him. Vlex understood war as faith in motion. The strong advanced. The weak yielded. Victory proved divine approval. Loss proved unworthiness. That was simple. But humans had not acted like conquerors. They had acted like something wounded. Something that remembered pain. His communications officer spoke quietly. "Commander, the High Council requests your assessment." Vlex closed the battle feed. "My assessment is that we underestimated them." The officer hesitated. "The Council will not like that. The Council attacked their civilians. You ordered the strike." Vlex turned, and the officer lowered his eyes. "Yes," Vlex said. "I did." For the first time since the convoy died, he allowed himself to remember the human captain's voice. Calm. Controlled. Trying to explain. Trying to prevent bloodshed. Vlex had mistaken that calm for weakness. Now Terra was ash. If you are still watching, stay with the story because this is where the galaxy begins to understand humanity. Tap like, subscribe for more HFY stories, and share this video with the friend who always waits for the moment when humans stop being polite. The war spread faster than the Theer could understand. Humanity did not advance in one grand line. It did not gather all its ships into a single glorious armada for the enemy to admire. It did not seek symbolic victories. It cut systems apart. 1 hour, a fuel depot went dark. The next, a relay station transmitted false orders into Theer space. Then a patrol fleet jumped into what it believed was a safe corridor and found mines waiting in perfect silence. Then a shipyard lost power, shields, doors, docks, and command control within the same 20 seconds. The Theer command structure depended on certainty. Orders came from the top. Lower commanders obeyed. Formations were sacred. Battle plans were written like prayers. Humans treated plans as useful until reality disagreed. Then they adapted. That was what broke the Combine first. Not firepower. Not numbers. Adaptation. A Theer cruiser group would form a spear pattern, designed to pierce an enemy line. Human destroyers would refuse the line entirely, split into clusters, attack from 3 elevations, and force the spear to turn in directions it was never designed to turn. A Theer base would reinforce its front shield. Human drones would enter through maintenance debris fields and disable heat vents from behind. A Theer commander would prepare for honorable ship combat. Human cyber teams would corrupt his targeting software before the first shot. The Combine had fought many species. It had beaten resource swarms, defensive coalitions, pirate kingdoms, and border states. But it had never fought humans. Humans did not care what the enemy considered proper. They cared what worked. At the center of the storm, Commander Rotova moved from target to target with the 7th Fleet. Her crew grew tired. Her pilots slept in armor. Her engineers repaired shield damage while engines were still hot. Nobody complained. The recording of the mendicant had spread across every human ship. Captain Howell's final order had become a phrase. Launch the beacon. It meant do your duty even when death is already in the room. It meant make sure the truth survives. It meant humanity will hear you. On the 9th day of the war, Rotova's fleet intercepted a damaged Theer destroyer near a broken relay moon. The ship had been left behind by its battle group after suffering engine failure. Its weapons were dead. Its shields were failing. Most of its crew had evacuated into sealed compartments. Rotova could have destroyed it from range. Instead, she ordered boarding teams. The Marines moved through the alien ship in silence. Their armor was matte black, their visors blank, their weapons heavy. They did not shout. They did not celebrate. They sealed corridors, disabled resistance, treated wounded enemies who stopped fighting, and took the surviving commander alive. His name was Grell. He was brought aboard the Valiant Heart and placed inside an interrogation room. It was not a torture chamber. That surprised him. It was a plain room divided by clear armor glass. One chair on each side. One table. Soft white light. No weapons visible. Grell stood rather than sit. He was tall, thin, and rigid, with ceremonial marks painted across his face. Even wounded, even captured, he carried himself as if dignity could protect him. Rotova entered alone. She wore a simple dark uniform with no medals. Grell looked at her with open disgust. You should have killed me. Rotova Saturday, that can still happen in war. But not in this room. I will give you no military secrets. I am not here for your secrets. Then why am I alive? Rotova studied him. Because I want to know why. Grell's eyes narrowed. Why what? Why the mendicant? For the first time, his expression shifted. Rotova continued. A civilian cargo ship. Medical supplies. Cultural records. 2 light escorts. No threat to your empire. Why destroy it? Grell stared as if the answer was obvious. Because it entered space claimed by the Combine. It was neutral space. It was space we chose to claim. That is not a reason. It is the only reason required. The strong claim. The weak obey. Rotova leaned back. There was no anger on her face now, and that unsettled him more than rage would have. You really believe that, she said. Grell lifted his chin. It is truth. No, Rotova said. It is habit wearing a holy mask. Grell stiffened. You insult my faith. I am describing your crime. He slammed one hand against the table. You humans speak of crime because you are soft. You hide behind trade laws and neutral zones. You send cargo ships instead of warships. You pretend words matter more than strength. Rotova stood. A screen came alive on his side of the glass. Images appeared. A blue planet under storms. Early humans hunting in snow. Cities rising beside rivers. Armies with bronze blades. Ships burning on oceans. Trenches filled with mud. Cities broken by bombs. Mushroom clouds rising over the horizon. Orbital fire above Mars. Colonies sealed under emergency glass. Peace conferences. Memorial walls. Children in classrooms. Factories building starships. Hospitals on moons. Cargo vessels crossing the dark. Grell watched in silence. Rotova spoke quietly. You looked at our trade ships and thought we had forgotten war. The images changed. Now they showed human soldiers carrying wounded enemies from fire. Engineers rebuilding cities. Old enemies signing treaties. Fleets escorting civilian convoys. Graves marked with names. We did not forget, Rotova said. We remembered too well. Grell's breathing slowed. Rotova faced him through the glass. We are not peaceful because we never knew violence. We are peaceful because we know exactly what violence costs. We built laws because we know what happens without them. We protect civilians because we have seen what happens when nobody does. The screen froze on the mendicant. Broken hull. Scattered cargo. No survivors. Rotova's voice hardened. You thought killing a civilian convoy would show strength. To us, it showed something else. What? Grell asked before he could stop himself. That you are a threat that cannot be ignored. Grell looked at the wreckage. For the first time, he had no answer. Rotova continued. You do not understand human fear. When we fear something, we study it. When we study it, we find its weak points. When it kills our people, we remove its ability to do so again. You will destroy the Combine, Grell whispered. No, Rotova said. We will destroy the war machine that thought murder was policy. What survives after that depends on your people. Grell lowered himself into the chair. His pride did not vanish. But something inside it cracked. Across Theer space, cracks were appearing everywhere. At first, the High Council tried to control the story. They told their citizens that humanity had committed cowardly attacks. They said the Combine had been betrayed by lesser species. They promised divine victory. But truth travels strangely during war. Refugee ships carried rumors. Captured officers returned through prisoner exchanges with hollow eyes. Civilian stations saw military fleets retreating. Families waited for soldiers who did not come home. And then human broadcasts began. They were not propaganda in the usual sense. They did not show screaming threats or triumphant music. They showed evidence. The mendicant's last transmission. The cargo manifest. The registry. The medical supply list. The names of the dead. Not numbers. Names. Each broadcast ended with the same sentence. These people were killed because your leaders believed human life was cheap. That sentence reached places human missiles never could. On Theer colony worlds, civilians began asking questions. Why had a convoy been attacked? Why had the war started over a civilian vessel? Why had the Council said humans were weak if human fleets were now destroying military bases in days? Why were temples calling for sacrifice while commanders were calling for retreat? The Combine had ruled through certainty. Humanity introduced doubt. Doubt was more dangerous than any rail cannon. High Commander Erlak saw the danger too late. Inside the temple ship sanctuary, the heart of Theer political and religious power, he stood before the High Council as reports collapsed around him. Forward base Hara is gone. Supply Route 7 is broken. Third Spear Fleet has lost contact. Fuel reserves in the Caliph system have been destroyed. Human forces are broadcasting civilian casualty lists into our inner colonies. One priest rose, his robes shaking. Silence those broadcasts. We tried, Erlak said. They are using our own relays. Another priest pointed at the galaxy map. Then attack Earth. Erlak stared at him. The chamber became very still. Attack Earth, he repeated. Yes. Their home world. Their sacred center. Strike the heart and the body dies. Erlak almost laughed, but there was no humor left in him. We cannot reach Earth. We are the chosen. We cannot reach Earth, Erlak said again, louder. Between us and their home world are 6 active human fleets, minefields we cannot detect, and relay traps that have already consumed 3 strike groups. Our ships cannot cross the distance. The priest's face tightened. Then you admit weakness. I admit reality. The word was almost blasphemy in that room. A younger strategist named Kale stepped forward. He looked exhausted, as if he had not slept since the war began. My lords, he said, there is something you must understand. The council turned toward him. Kale activated a private file. Human history filled the central display. Not battlefield summaries. Patterns. War, recovery, unity, law, memory, deterrence. Kale spoke carefully. We believed humans were driven by commerce. That was incorrect. Trade is not their core. It is their restraint. A priest sneered. Speak clearly. Kale swallowed. Humans are a trauma species. Silence. Erlak did not interrupt. Kale continued. Their civilization developed through internal conflict at a scale most species never survive. They fought themselves for land, belief, resources, identity, fear, revenge, survival. They built weapons capable of ending their own species. Then they stepped back from that edge and created systems to prevent it from happening again. The display showed human memorials. Millions of names. Then billions. They did not become peaceful because violence disappeared from them. They became disciplined because they knew violence lived inside them. Kale looked at the council. When we destroyed their convoy, we did not frighten merchants. We triggered the oldest part of their collective mind. The chamber felt smaller. One council member whispered, "Revenge." "No," Kale said. "Revenge burns hot and fades. This is not fading. This is punishment shaped by strategy. They are not trying to conquer us. They are making sure we can never repeat the act." Erlak looked at the map. Human fleets were not moving toward temples, farms, schools, or civilian worlds. They were cutting military nerves. Command. Fuel. Weapons. Docks. Relays. Training centers. The message was clear. The Combine could live. But not as a predator. Another priest spoke weakly. "Can they be stopped?" Kale hesitated. "Only if they believe the threat is gone." "And how do we make them believe that?" Kale looked around the sacred chamber. "We surrender. Fully. Publicly. We give them the ships. The commanders. The attack records. The council order that authorized the convoy strike." The room erupted. Shouts. Accusations. Prayers. Threats. Erlak remained silent. Because he knew Kale was right. The Combine had built its identity on never kneeling. But humanity was not asking them to kneel. Humanity was removing their legs. The Sword of Faith, once proud hunter of trade routes, drifted near the remains of Supply Route 7. Commander Vlek stood on a damaged bridge filled with smoke and emergency light. Half his display systems were dead. His left arm hung useless from a shrapnel wound. His crew moved with the slow confusion of people who knew the battle was already lost. The human attack had been perfect. Not glorious. Perfect. Vlex had arranged his battle group in a layered defensive formation, expecting a frontal assault. Human ships appeared above and below the plane of engagement, forcing his vessels to split fire. Then human missile carriers launched from extreme range, not at ships, but at the empty space into which Thea's ships would move if they followed doctrine. They followed doctrine. The missiles were waiting. 3 Thea cruisers died in the first minute. Then the Valiant Heart arrived. Vlex knew the ship by now. Everyone did. It came through battle like a verdict. His weapons officer shouted, "Main batteries failing. Engine 2 gone. Shield grid down to 11%. Human ships closing." Vlex gripped the rail before him. "Prepare for ramming course." His first officer looked at him. "Commander. If we must die, we will die against their flagship." But before the order could be carried out, the communications panel lit. "They are hailing us," the officer said. Vlex stared. "Put it through." Commander Anna Rotova appeared on the screen. Her face was calm. Behind her, the bridge of the Valiant Heart glowed with controlled movement. "Commander Vlex," she said. "You commanded the attack on the Mendicant." Vlex felt every surviving officer on his bridge look at him. He could deny it. He could claim orders. He could speak of sacred territory. But there was no strength left in lies. "I did," he said. Rotova studied him through the screen. "You have seen the result. I have seen human savagery." "No," Rotova said. "You have seen human attention." The word struck harder than insult. Vlex said nothing. Rotova continued. "Your ship is disabled. Your escorts are destroyed or retreating. Your engines cannot jump. Your weapons cannot stop us. Then fire. I am offering surrender." Vlex almost spat the word back. Surrender. The Combine did not surrender. It advanced, conquered, died, or was remembered. But the bridge around him was filled with the wounded. Young officers. Old navigators. Engineers who had followed his orders because faith had told them he was righteous. He remembered the mendicant breaking open under his guns. He remembered leaving the wreckage. He remembered thinking there was nothing of worth there. Now he understood what had been there. The beginning of the end. His first officer whispered, "Commander, the lower decks are burning." Vlex closed his eyes. For the first time in his life, pride felt small. He opened them. "I surrender the sword of faith." The bridge went silent. Rotova nodded once. "Power down weapons. Prepare to receive boarding teams. Any resistance will end your ship." The screen went dark. Vlex stood motionless. He had expected shame to feel hot. It felt cold. Human boarding teams arrived within minutes. They moved with discipline. They secured weapons. They separated officers. They treated wounded crew members without kindness, but without cruelty. That confused Vlex most. He had imagined demons. He found professionals. One human medic sealed the bleeding wound in his arm. Vlex stared at her. "Why treat me?" She did not look up. "Because you are no longer fighting. I killed your civilians." "Yes," she said. Her hands did not pause. "Then why not let me bleed?" The medic finally looked at him. "Because we are not you." Vlex had no answer. The word stayed with him long after they took him away. You have reached the heart of the story now, and the lesson is getting heavier. Like the video if the tension has pulled you in, subscribe for more human strength stories, and share it so another sci-fi fan can join before the final reckoning begins. Commander Vlex was taken to a holding room aboard the Valiant Heart. Not a cage. Not a pit. A room. There was a bed fixed to the wall, a water unit, a medical scanner, and a narrow window looking into space. That window was crueler than chains. Through it, he could see the remains of his battle group. Ships that had once carried holy banners now drifted as metal ruins. Human salvage teams moved between them. Not looting. Cataloging. Searching for survivors. Recording evidence. War, to humans, seemed to have paperwork even in the middle of destruction. Hours later, Rotova entered. 2 guards waited outside. Vlex stood. "Have you come to judge me?" "Yes." He lifted his chin. "Then do it." Rotova placed a small device on the table. A hologram appeared. Not of battle. Of people. Human faces. One by one. Men, women, young officers, older crew, cooks, engineers, medics, translators, cargo handlers. Vlex frowned. Rotova spoke. These were the people aboard the Mendicant and its escorts. The faces continued. "How many?" he asked despite himself. 312. The number was smaller than the losses his own forces had suffered. That made it worse. Humanity had burned through bases, fleets, depots, and command groups because of 312 people. Vlex tried to understand. In the Combine, lives were counted by function. Priests, commanders, pilots, workers, faithful, unworthy. The individual mattered only as part of divine order. Humans had sent him names. Faces. Families. Short records. Captain Howell. 40 years of service. Known for carrying extra medical cargo on low-profit routes. Lieutenant Mara Chen. Escort pilot. Survived by 2 brothers on Luna. Chief Engineer Samuel Ortiz. Rebuilt the Mendicant's life support twice rather than retire the ship. Dr. Liane Voss. Traveling to the Yeth hub to teach emergency medicine. Cook Amina Zhao. Famous among crew for making fresh bread during long voyages. Vlex looked away. Rotova's voice followed him. You thought you attacked ships. He said nothing. You attacked people. His jaw tightened. In war, people die. There was no war. There is now. Yes, Rotova said. Because you made one. The faces faded. Rotova leaned forward. I want you alive because your people need to hear this from you. Not from us. From you. Vlex looked back at her. What do you want me to say? The truth. He laughed once, bitterly. Truth does not save defeated commanders. No, Rotova said. But it may save civilians. That word again. Civilians. Humans drew bright lines around people who did not fight. The Theer had lines too, but they were softer when faith demanded expansion. A worker who served an enemy economy could be a target. A merchant who crossed claimed space could be an invader. A child raised under foreign law could become tomorrow's soldier. Humans saw that thinking and called it murder. Worse, they had the strength to punish anyone who disagreed. What happens to the Combine? Vlex asked. That depends on your High Council. They will not surrender. They already asked for a ceasefire. Vlex stared. For a moment, he did not understand the words. Rotova continued. They offered disarmament. Limited at first. Then expanded terms after our third fleet entered the Kareth system. The Kareth system was close to the inner worlds. Too close. Vlex sat down slowly. The council begged. They used cleaner language. His voice dropped. And you accepted? Not yet. Why? Because we need proof. Of what? That the Combine understands the difference between losing a battle and ending a threat. Vlex looked through the window again. Human ships moved with steady purpose among the wreckage. He had called them savages. Now he was not sure what word fit. Savages enjoyed destruction. Humans seemed burdened by it. But they carried the burden without hesitation. That was worse. The High Council's ceasefire message reached Human Command 12 days after the Mendicant died. By then, the Theer military map looked like a body with its arteries cut. Fleets remained, but could not coordinate. Bases remained, but could not refuel. Commanders remained, but could not trust orders. The Combine could still hurt people. It could no longer win. Admiral Kinski stood again beneath the mountain on Earth. The surrender request floated over the black table. The Theer offered peace. They offered reparations. They offered withdrawal from disputed sectors. They offered punishment of Commander Vlex. Kinski read the proposal once. Then deleted the display. A minister across from him blinked. Admiral. That is not surrender, Kinski said. That is negotiation. The intelligence director nodded. They are trying to preserve core military capacity. Of course they are. The minister looked tired. What are our terms? Kinski activated a new document. It contained no poetry. No grand historical language. Only conditions. Full decommissioning of all long-range offensive fleets. Transfer of all records related to the Mendicant attack. Removal of the High Council from military authority. Independent monitoring of shipyards. Return of occupied border colonies to local governance. War crime tribunal for commanders who ordered civilian attacks. Permanent recognition of neutral space law. Public admission of responsibility across all Theer civilian networks. The room was quiet. Someone said, they will consider this humiliation. Kinski looked at the wreckage image of the Mendicant still preserved on the side display. They should. Rotova received the final terms while the Valiant Heart orbited the shattered remains of the Sanctuary's outer defense ring. The Sanctuary itself, the great temple ship of the Theer Combine, hung ahead like a dark moon covered in scars. It had not yet fallen. Its shields were damaged. Its weapons were mostly silent. Its leaders were inside. The last symbolic heart of the Combine still breathed. Human fleets surrounded it. Not close enough for desperation attacks. Not far enough for escape. Rotova read the message from Earth. Then she opened a channel to the sanctuary. High Commander Erlak appeared. He looked older than his first intelligence profile. His markings were smeared. His uniform was torn at the shoulder. Behind him, priests argued in low voices. Rotova did not wait for ceremony. "You have our terms." Erlak's mouth tightened. "Your terms would end the Combine as it has existed for centuries." "Yes. You ask us to surrender our fleets, our command authority, our sacred right to expand. I ask you to surrender your ability to murder civilians and call it destiny." One of the priests pushed into view. "Human commander, you speak without respect." Rotova's eyes moved to him. "I am speaking to the people who authorized the killing of a medical convoy." The priest stepped back. Erlak took a breath. "If we refuse?" Rotova looked past him, toward the temple ship's command chamber, as if she could see through steel and faith. "Then we continue." Simple words. No threat needed. Erlak understood. That was the horror of humans. Their worst promises were spoken calmly. He looked away from the screen. The council argued behind him. Some wanted martyrdom. Some wanted escape. Some still believed a final miracle would arrive because belief had always protected them from doubt. But outside the sanctuary, human ships waited. Not angry in the way the council understood anger. Ready. Erlak closed his eyes. When he opened them, the old world of the Combine was already gone. "We accept," he said. The priest screamed at him. Erlak ignored it. "We accept all terms." Rotova nodded. "Transmit command codes. Power down weapons. Prepare to receive inspection teams." "And after that?" Erlak asked. "After that, your people live with what your leaders did." The channel ended. On Theer worlds, the surrender broadcast began 1 hour later. Citizens gathered in public squares, temple halls, factory shelters, colony domes, and transport stations. They expected a speech about sacrifice. They received confession. The High Council admitted that Theer forces had attacked a human civilian convoy in neutral space. It admitted that the convoy carried humanitarian supplies. It admitted that the attack had been ordered as a political lesson. It admitted that humanity's declaration of war was a direct response. For many Theer citizens, this was the first honest sentence their government had ever spoken. The reaction was not simple. Some refused to believe it. Some wept. Some cursed humans. Some cursed the council. Some stood in silence, feeling the foundation of their world shift beneath their feet. Then the names of the human dead appeared on Theer public networks. 312 names. The Combine had lost far more. But those names had started everything. A teacher on a Theer colony read them aloud to her students and did not know why her voice broke. A dock worker who had served military ships for 20 years stared at the cargo manifest and realized the destroyed vessel could have saved lives on worlds like his. A young cadet removed the painted mark of expansion from his face and washed it down a sink. The war had not only broken the Combine's fleets. It had broken the story the Combine told about itself. That was the deeper defeat. Days later, Commander Vlex was brought before a tribunal aboard a neutral station. Representatives from several species attended. Humans sat at one side. Theer observers sat at the other. The room was full, but quiet. Vlex walked in without chains. Human guards did not need them. He had nowhere to go, and everyone knew it. The tribunal asked him to state his name. He did. They asked his rank. He gave it. They asked whether he had commanded the attack on the mendicant. Vlex looked at the human section. Rotova was there. So were families of the dead, watching through remote projection. For a moment, his old training rose inside him. Speak of duty. Speak of claims. Speak of sacred command. Then he saw the face of Captain Howell in the evidence file. An old human captain with tired eyes and a slight smile. A man who had tried to talk. Vlex lowered his head. Yes, he said. I gave the order. The tribunal chamber remained silent. The questioner continued. Why? Vlex took longer to answer. Because I believed human restraint was weakness. Because I believed a civilian ship could be destroyed without consequence. Because my leaders wanted a lesson delivered, and I thought I was strong enough to deliver it. His voice changed. I was wrong. The words carried across every recorder in the chamber. I did not begin a lesson. I began a war. I did not show fear strength. I exposed fear ignorance. The humans did not attack us because they love war. They attacked us because we proved we could not be trusted with peace. Rotova did not move. Neither did the families. Vlex forced himself to continue. I ask no mercy for myself. But I say this to any fear who hears me. Never again mistake a human ship for an easy target. Never again mistake their laws for fear. Never again mistake their patience for surrender. The tribunal recorded every word. History would decide what to do with it. Humanity had already decided what mattered. The threat was broken. The dead were named. The beacon had been heard. We are close to the end now, and this is the part that stays with you after the screen goes dark. Give the video a like if you feel the weight of the story, subscribe for the next one, and share it with someone who understands that in HFY, humanity does not always roar first, but when it does, the stars listen. The valiant heart returned to Earth 3 weeks after the war began. It came home damaged. Its armor bore long scars from energy strikes. Several weapon ports had been replaced in the field. One engine housing was blackened from a near overload during the Kareth engagement. But it came home. Thousands of ships gathered in orbit to watch the 7th Fleet pass. No victory music played. No fireworks were launched. Earth had learned long ago that war celebrations age badly. Instead, the names of the mendicant dead were transmitted across the planet. People stopped in cities, farms, stations, ports, schools, and ships. For 3 minutes, human space went quiet. Commander Rotova stood alone on the observation deck as Earth turned below. Blue oceans. White clouds. Brown continents. Home. Admiral Kinski joined her. For a while, neither spoke. Then he said, "You did what was needed." Rotova looked at the planet. "That is not the same as doing something good." "No," Kinski said. "It is not." She appreciated that he did not lie. Below them, billions of people were alive because generations before them had learned hard lessons. Build shields. Guard convoys. Track threats. Answer murder quickly enough that enemies remembered. But somewhere in that truth was another truth. Every war left marks. Even necessary ones. Rotova thought of Howell teaching her cards in a noisy mess hall. She thought of Grell sitting stunned before human history. She thought of Vlex asking why the medic did not let him bleed. Because we are not you. That answer had traveled farther than any fleet. Months passed. The fear combined did not vanish. Humanity did not occupy its civilian worlds. It did not strip them of language, faith, or culture. It dismantled their war fleets. It monitored their shipyards. It removed leaders who had treated murder as doctrine. It opened neutral investigations. It forced the Combine to teach the mendicant attack in its military academies. Not as a triumph. As the greatest strategic failure in Theer history. A single convoy. A single cruel decision. A single assumption that humans would complain, bargain, and move on. Instead, humanity had declared war within hours. Not because humans loved revenge. Not because they wanted territory, but because some lines exist for a reason. A civilian ship is not a battlefield. A medical convoy is not a trophy. A murdered crew is not a message to be ignored. Years later, a new generation of Theer officers studied the war in quiet classrooms under the supervision of their own reformed command. They watched the recording from the mendicant. They heard Howell's voice. They heard the Theer demand. They saw the beams fire. They saw the emergency beacon launch. Then they studied the human response. The timeline shocked them every year. Minutes to verify. Hours to declare. Hours more to strike. Days to cripple a military empire. Weeks to force surrender. One instructor, an older Theer who had survived the war as a junior engineer, always ended the lesson the same way. He would stand before the class and show them a human cargo ship. Unarmed. Slow. Full of medicine. Then he would show them a human warship. Armored. Silent. Waiting. These are not opposites, he would say. They are the same civilization. One is what humans offer when treated with respect. The other is what arrives when you kill the first. The students always remembered that. So did the galaxy. Trade routes near former Theer space became safer than they had ever been. Pirates avoided human-marked convoys. Border powers revised their rules of engagement. Diplomats began speaking more carefully when human civilians were involved. Not because humans threatened everyone. They did not need to. The story had done the work. The wreckage field where the mendicant died was never cleared. Humanity placed a memorial beacon there. It transmitted the names of the dead in every major galactic language. It also transmitted the original distress data. Any ship passing through that region could listen. Most did. The message was short. This was the civilian convoy mendicant. It was attacked in neutral space. Its people were killed. Humanity heard them. That final sentence became famous. Humanity heard them. It appeared on memorial walls. On escort ship patches. On convoy control stations. On the inside of fleet helmets. On the first page of the new Human Civilian Protection Charter. It meant that no human was too far away to matter. No ship too small. No voice too faint. No beacon too weak. In time, other species adopted the phrase. A merchant from the Yeth hub once said it after humans saved his colony from a reactor plague. A refugee child whispered it when a human relief ship arrived through a storm of debris. Even Theer reformers used it when they built their first civilian rescue fleet from the stripped hulls of old warships. Humanity heard them. The phrase outlived the war. Commander Anna Rotova retired many years later. She never called herself a hero. When interviewers asked about the Theer War, she always corrected them. It was not a war about glory, she said. It was a war about consequence. When asked if she hated the Theer, she would pause. Then answer carefully. I hated what they chose. I hated what they believed that choice meant. But hatred is not a strategy. We ended the threat. That was the mission. Once, near the end of her life, she visited the Mendicant Memorial alone. The beacon recognized her ship and allowed close approach. She sat in a small shuttle, looking at the field of preserved wreckage glittering in starlight. A piece of hull turned slowly beyond the glass. On it, faded but still visible, were the letters MENDICANT. Rotova placed one hand against the window. I am sorry, Howell, she whispered. The beacon continued its endless work. Name after name. Life after life. Not numbers. Never numbers. Somewhere far away, a Theer patrol ship passed near the edge of the memorial zone. Its young captain slowed his vessel. His crew grew nervous. Old fear still lived in their culture, even after reform. The captain listened to the beacon. When the final sentence played, he ordered his ship to mark the location as protected space. His first officer asked why. The captain looked at the stars. Because this is where we learn the price of arrogance. The patrol ship moved on. It did not claim the space. It guarded it. And that, perhaps, was the final victory. Not the destroyed bases. Not the surrendered fleets. Not the broken council. The final victory was that a species built on conquest learned to protect a place where it had once committed murder. Humanity had not forgiven easily. It rarely did. But it had allowed survival. It had allowed change. That was the part the galaxy sometimes struggled to understand. Humanity could be terrifying in war, but war was not its natural home. Humans built gardens in sealed domes. They carried music between stars. They taught alien children games from Earth. They argued over coffee, repaired old ships, rescued strangers, and sent medical cargo into dangerous space because someone, somewhere, needed help. That was humanity too. Maybe that was the truest part. The fear saw the warships and learned fear. The rescued saw the cargo ships and learned trust. Both were real. Both mattered. The mistake was thinking one could exist without the other. Because behind every human hand offering help stood the memory of every human hand that had once held a weapon. Behind every law stood a grave. Behind every convoy stood a fleet. And behind every beacon stood a promise. We will hear you. We will come. And if someone killed you believing no answer would follow, then the stars themselves would carry the reply. The fear attacked the human convoy. They expected protest. They expected negotiation. They expected fear. Within hours, humanity declared war. Within days, the Combine understood. Within weeks, the galaxy remembered. Never attack the ones humanity sends to heal. Never mistake kindness for weakness. Never assume a quiet species has forgotten how to fight. Because humans carry peace like a choice. And when that choice is taken from them, they do not stumble into war. They arrive with names. They arrive with evidence. They arrive with fire. And they do not stop until the lesson is written so deeply into history that even the stars learn to speak it. Humanity heard them. And humanity answered.